Good afternoon. Before we get started, we want to recognize some of our staff that have been nominated by their peers as providing really excellent customer service, really helpful to each other and to other staff. And so for that, we're going to take a group picture with all of you and our chair and board chair, board chair and our board vice chair and our president and CEO. So when I call your name, please come forward. Anissa Guzman. Ashley Hernandez. Luis Dominguez. Melissa Hernandez.
Oh, thank you so much.
Priscilla Segovia. Let's once again give everyone a hand and congratulations.
Hello and welcome to Opportunity Homes San Antonio's regular board meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. Please note this meeting will be recorded in its entirety. We'll now begin by conducting roll call. Chair Estrella Garcia Diaz.
Here.
Vice Chair Leila Powell.
Here.
Barbara Unkama Burford.
Here.
Janet Garcia.
Here.
David Hewitt. Here. Tanika Nikki Johnson.
Here.
Kayla Miranda.
Here.
Doug Ponick, Board of Commissioners Attorney.
I'm here.
President and CEO Michael Reyes.
Here.
Additionally, we have a Spanish interpreter located at the back of the room should you need their assistance. A quorum has been met. You may now call the meeting to order.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We will call this meeting to order. The Board of Commissioners or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071-076 for consultation concerning attorney-client matters, real estate litigation, personnel, and security matters. The board or committee reserves the right to enter into closed meeting at any time during the course of this meeting. It is now 1:08 p.m. Do we have citizens to be heard?
There are 3 citizens signed up to speak. Our first citizen signed up to speak is Richard Cantu.
Good afternoon. This is my 6th appearance before you. June 18th, June 15th, November 12th, December 10th, 2025. Good morning. This is my 6th appearance before you. June 18th, July 15th, November 12th, December 10th, 2025, and February 4th, 2026. My name is Richard Cantu. I am a 56-year-old disabled man who values my privacy. I do not want to be here, but I have no choice. I have spent hundreds of dollars of my own limited money on ink and paper to provide you with evidence you apparently never received. If you had received the proof of forgery and the roach infestation I documented, any reasonable person would have acted by now. On February 4th, I warned you about the retaliation. It arrived in three forms, different forms, versions of the same lease violation. One was signed by Benjamin Lug as Director of the Legal Services, certified mail to me on December 15, 2025. One was signed by Benjamin Lug, an attorney for Opportunity Home, hand delivered to me on February 2nd, 2026. The third version removed his name and title entirely, dated January 30, certified mail to me on February 4, 2026. This isn't a mistake, it's a setup. I am being cited for interfering with staff because I refuse to be silent about the roaches in my home and the $500 overcharge of my ledger. I'm handing these documents again to you today. Please look at them. The forgery, my July 2025 check was altered. On May 5th, receipts prove I am being overcharged. The retaliation, 3 conflicting notices with the same violation prove this is harassment, not management. The health hazard, I am documenting the failure of worldwide pest control. I am not the source of pests. I am the victim of them. Under Texas Property Code, Section 923.331, you are on formal notice. If you proceed with this eviction, you are doing so with full knowledge that it is a retaliatory. I have done my part. I have spent my own money to give the facts. I am asking the board, will you finally look at the evidence, or will you continue to let your staff weaponize the lease against my disabled man? Resolution 6744 is a failure. 6+ years, 6 miserable years. I emailed the board under communications@homessa.com and public comment.homessa.com over 100 videos of my bleach units roach infestation since November 2025. I have a time limit on my Google Pictures application. Thank you.
Our next citizen signed up to speak is Claude Clifton Polk. I've been informed that he has left, so our next speaker is Christina Vega. That concludes our citizens signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to minutes and approval of the February 4th, 2026 regular board meeting minutes. Are there any discussion regarding those minutes? If there are none, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the February 4th, 2026 regular board meeting minutes. Do I have a first? Turn it on.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, and now we will go on to the public hearing section of this meeting today. Public hearing regarding the proposed 2026-2027 MTW agency plan update. Do we have anyone signed up to speak with regard to this public hearing?
No one has signed up to speak in advance. However, if anyone would like to speak to this item, they may.
Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. I just wanted to open up the public comment for a public hearing for any residents or member of the public who'd like to speak on our proposed FY 2027 MTW plan. If there are no comments in my presentation later, we'll let the public know where to submit public comments and let them know that the comment period is ongoing.
Thank you. Okay, and now we'll move on to individual items. Item number 5, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6802, authorizing an MTW loan and modification of the LVPFC loan for the Snowden Apartments project. Lorraine Robles, Chief Real Estate and Development Officer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm coming to you today regarding Snowden Senior Living. As you recall, it's a 135-unit senior development, our first self-development project. And today we have 2 requests. The first one is that we're requesting an additional $4 million in MTW funds. Please know that in anticipation of conversion from our construction loan to our permanent debt, we started on this last year, and we anticipated that we may have a shortfall and we may need additional dollars. So we made sure to put into our 2025-2026 MTW plan, which was approved on September 4th of 2025, that we earmarked at least $4 million for Snowden. So please know that that's already been approved by HUD. The second thing is that we're requesting to subordinate the Las Vadas Public Facility Corps $2 million loan to all current loans in the project except for MTW. Now, the reason that we need to do this is that it was originally listed or structured so that it would be paid off at conversion. But given our current circumstances and knowing that we're going to have a shortfall, we are proposing to PNC to extend the maturity date to 2052, as well as subordinate it to the PNC permanent debt, so that way it'll be paid through cash flow once we get to that point. Now, the permanent debt at conversion may be lower than originally underwritten in our initial closing, and this we've been anticipating. We've been working at conversion since summer of last year. What led us to this point is that we had a delay in converting our subsidy programs, and I'll explain a little bit about that in just a minute, as well as trying to deal with high operating expenses that stem from increased insurance requirements by Freddie Mac. So with regard to the subsidy program, originally we proposed that 54 units at Snowden would be subsidized by a local non-traditional subsidy program that would be paid through MTW. This never materialized. We're unable to implement that program. At the same time, we were trying to fill units. So what we thought would be best was to go ahead and fill those 54 units with voucher holders. So Section 8 voucher holders that are seniors could come into the property, and we'd mark those 54 units towards that endeavor. However, in our discussions with PNC, they explained that that would not be acceptable because, as you know, with Section 8 vouchers, the subsidy is tied to that voucher and that resident, rather than to that unit and that property. And so in exchange for the previous L&T MTW contract, we offered them a PBV contract. And so that's what we're working through now. We are working to convert or create 54 PBV units at the site. I think we currently have 45. We still have 9 to go. However, because it's a senior development and it's been very successful, we stay pretty full. And so turnover is very rare. So it's going to take us a little bit to be able to convert the next 9, which will be through attrition. We have already submitted our application, which is great, submitted our application to Freddie Mac for their review. We are still uncertain as to how much we actually need, but we don't believe we're going to go beyond the $4 million. Right now, we're looking at probably $2.2 million that we'll need with regard to a shortfall. Our extension expires April 1, so we are on track right now to convert by March 31st. And so in preparing for that, we needed to make sure that we could get your approval to do so.
I have a question about the financing structure. So the condition for conversion to permanent, does that include the full conversion of the formerly voucher holders to PBV, or is that a good faith effort we're making for the lender?
Correct, good faith effort. Okay. So they wanted to see it in action already, so we have provided them with rent rolls through February. We're getting ready, yes, through February, to show them that it's already in motion. We provided them with the units, and we've explained that the next 9 will have to be through attrition. So as soon as we're able, we'll convert those next 9.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a really quick question, and I think you answered it, but I just want to make sure. So after this restructuring, is there any expectation of additional financial need for this particular project, or this should cover
This should cover it.
us moving forward?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Okay, if there are no additional questions, I request a motion to approve Resolution 6802. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6906, authorizing the Nova Apartments transaction. Timothy Alcott, Executive Vice President.
If you like, I could do 6 and 7 together.
Absolutely. So I'll read 7 as well. Consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6914, authorizing the Durrington Ridge apartment transaction.
Right. And you all will recognize both of these names because we brought it to the last board meeting. And so thank you all for approving this transaction in concept. And what I'm doing now is I'm bringing it back for the final approval. So what we did was that we created legal entities, San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation, or SAHFC Nova LLC, and then SHFC Durrington Ridge LLC. And so there'll be the partnership interest in these transactions. Nothing's changed. And so if you recall last time, we met with the city council people over these different jurisdictions, and they all have approved them. But we do need the final approval today, so you're seeing it twice, and that's why. But for very quickly, I'll do very quickly through the PowerPoints, just to remind everyone what this was. But you met the developers here last month, and they're from Ascendant Capital Partners and Culver Investment Partners. These are 2 acquisitions. This one's Nova, and Nova is by UTSA, and there's a rendering of the, actually that is the development, and you'll see the different AMIs that we have. It's a mix. What we do is we're very selective when we do these developments. We do it in areas of town where there's not much affordable housing, and so you'll see both of these in those areas. Also, because of our development policy, that we put the funds that we generate from this into deeply affordable units pursuant to the board-approved development policy. And the amenities is first class of development. And I'm going fast because you saw it last month. But also what's really interesting now is that we can actually purchase apartments and become be partners in partnerships. That's a lot of P's. Cheaper than building. So you'll see the cost per unit here is $148,000 a unit. As you saw last month, we had many that cost $300,000. And so there's times of the season, and sometimes it's cheaper to buy than build. And this is one of those times, oftentimes, that can happen. And this is Durrington, which is the other one. This one's, if you go north on 281, take 2 Peach Parkway, do the loop around, and it's the first apartment on your right. And it's also, I think, Commissioner Johnson, I think you asked me about where the park and ride was, and it was a block away, the Via Park and Ride, and so the big bus stop we have there, so it's near that, and a lot of jobs in the area, very little affordable housing in the area. Again, we've walked these units, they're in very good condition. I think this one's about 5 years old, and so we're purchasing a partnership interest in this as well. You'll see there's the unit breakdowns. We have from 50 to 80% AMIs. But what also is really neat is that not only we have the write-downs, but as we talked about before, some of the rents between a market rate and the 50% AMI units is like $800 a month difference. So not only are we generating funds, but also it makes affordable housing in the area. And there's very, very, very little affordable housing in these areas. This one, because it's newer and it's a little bit absolutely first class, I should say, is $204,000 a unit, so it's a little bit less. We have no financial liabilities in these. It's a revenue generator, so we can provide more deeply affordable housing. And as we go through our conversion of our public housing and make this all of our units look very beautiful, this is how we generate the funds. This is one of the few mechanisms that we have to actually generate funds. And this is where the funds go. You'll see it goes to budget gaps, preserving and upgrading public housing units. We help units 50% and below, et cetera. And that's it. So I asked for approval of both these transactions. It's the same as we discussed last month.
Any questions or discussion regarding these 2 items?
I do have a question. Will we be carrying any permanent debt on these properties?
Opportunity Home does not carry any debt on these. Yes, correct.
So we also have the opportunity in the future, if we need to utilize these as almost like a less liquid cash reserve.
I don't think we can use this as a cash reserve because our partnership agreement doesn't allow that. So we can't use that as we couldn't draw money from these partnerships. We get a percentage of the tax savings every month only, and then every time it sells, we get 2% of the gross sales price. We went through these in closed session, but we wouldn't be able to draw down from the debt on these.
Thank you.
There being no other questions or discussion, I'm going to call for a motion to approve Resolution 6906 and 6914. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And I have a first. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6909, certifying Opportunity Home San Antonio's investment policy and investment strategies review. Aaron Sladek, Senior Director of Finance and Accounting. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So this is an annual item that we bring to you every year. It's required by the Texas Public Funds Investment Act. There's no changes at this time to the policy, but since we have some new commissioners, I'd like to just give a real quick overview of the policy. So it has several objectives. The primary investment objectives in order of priority for the policy are preservation of capital, liquidity, and yield. Preservation of capital is really dealing with a conservative investment strategy where you're going to pick safer investments, try and preserve your capital. This usually necessitates investing in very safe short-term instruments like U.S. Treasury bills. Liquidity refers to how quickly and easily a financial security can be converted into cash without losing significant value. So in short, it's how long it takes to sell an investment. This liquidity impacts our ability to meet short-term obligations such as vendor payments, payroll, as well as current debt service on our loans. There's a stipulation from HUD that all our investments must be capable of being liquidated on 1 day's notice. And the third primary investment objective is yield, which I think we're all familiar with. So that's expressed as a percentage. It's just a measure of how much income an investment generates. So we will try to achieve the highest yield consistent with these other factors of the investment policy. There are legal limitations regarding HUD funds and non-HUD funds. So for HUD funds, we have to comply with the HUD-approved investment instruments that are in Attachment A of the investment policy. For non-HUD funds, these are still considered public funds, so while not as stringent, we still have to conform or comply with the Texas Public Funds Investment Act. There is an administrative cost component to the policy. It states that in choosing an investment, we will consider the administrative work involved, and especially with regard to investments of short duration. So anything must be justified and considered cost effective to make that a worthwhile investment. And finally, there's a prudent standard in the policy. It just states that any investments made should be handled as a prudent person would handle their own affairs. So that's a real quick overview. And like I said, there's no changes to the policy at this time. Are there any questions?
Do we have any questions? No? Okay.
Not my first time. Like I said, this is an annual one. So.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I'd request a motion to approve Resolution 6909. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a first. Barbara, do I have a second? And I have a second. With the first and the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 9, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6910, accepting the independent auditor's report for the year end June 30th, 2025. Aaron, you're up again.
So I have Jason Hyde here with Garza Gonzalez and Associates. I just want to take this time to commend him and his team and thank them for their efficiency in both planning and conducting the audit. It's been terrific working with them and having them on board. They do have a lot of institutional knowledge and experience with us. Most recently, they handled the compliance piece of our financial compliance audit for 2020 through 2024. And going further back than that, I think it was around 2008 was their last year where they served as our primary auditor. So they do have a lot of experience with us. Jason has commented that, wow, you guys have grown a lot more complex in, those almost 2 decades. But yeah, we're glad to have them back on board. And Jason is going to deliver the results of the audit to you. Thank you.
We did prepare an audit summary that I think I believe you have in your packet. It's kind of just a summary, so we don't have to go through, both reports. It's a very large report. And I'm going to focus more on the audit results rather than like financials, which, you get on a monthly basis. As he mentioned, I don't know how many people are familiar with our firm, but we have been doing this for a long time. The firm's been around almost 50 years. I personally have been there about 26 years, let's say. And the whole time, we've been involved with affordable housing, including housing authorities. With that said, I'll go to page 1 of the audit summary. So we are presenting the financial statements and auditor's report for the year ended June 30th, 2025. The audit report includes Opportunity Home and all of the blended component units. Pretty much all of the activity that's not a limited partnership that doesn't meet the threshold to be considered blended. Here at the first table, you have the separate audits that have been performed, the type of audit that was issued, and then the approximate date that it was already completed. Facility Corporation, Spring Hill, Cortland Heights, Pecan Hill, Refugio, O'Connor Road, Converse Ranch, and SP2 Limited Partnership. And like I mentioned, the type of audit that we performed depends on the type of entity it is. You'll see some are HUD, 2 are uniform guidance because they're nonprofits, and then 1 there is a government auditing standard report. The money purchase pension plan is also included in these financial statements. Those are audited by other auditors, and they are included in here as those were audited. Number 2 there, we have the unmodified opinion on the primary government. So we are rendering an unmodified or clean opinion, which means that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. And as you know, we do sampling. This is not a 100% guarantee. We didn't look at all transactions. So it provides a reasonable, not absolute assurance that they are fairly stated. We do have one item in the opinion, the main opinion, emphasis of matter. It's just something that was so important and so significant that we had to emphasize that in the opinion. And I believe y'all are already aware of this, but the large write-off of notes and interest receivable that were deemed uncollectible. And, industry-wise, I think that was a very, very good move. Industry-wise, I don't think people are writing these off, and they're going to find out, or they do find out later that they're not going to get everything they thought they were going to get. Everyone thinks their assets are protected by the actual asset, but I think they're going to find out. We have 2 other opinions. One is the government auditing standards opinion. That's on internal control over financial reporting and other matters and compliance. That one as well is a clean opinion. There's no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance that was required to be reported. The last opinion there is the uniform guidance opinion. That is your, because you do spend over $750,000 of federal awards, you have the uniform guidance audit. That was an unmodified opinion and no material weaknesses. There are some other issues that we reported in a separate letter that, we thought were important enough to report, but they're not, we did not put them in the actual audit report in the schedule of findings. Just some other information here. The major programs that we audited this year were the Moving to Work program, as well as the Housing Choice Voucher cluster there. One item of note, the Opportunity Home was not considered a low-risk auditee. It was kind of a technicality, but basically that just means, we have to audit 40% of federal expenditures versus 20. It has no effect here whatsoever because we audit MTW, and that's about like 92% of your federal awards, so it's really a non-issue. On the next page, other procedures that we performed or are going to perform during the audit, there will be a REACT submission of the Housing Authority. That one's has to be done by the end of the month. We've already completed REACT multifamily submissions for a number of entities that are listed there. And then one other item that we still need to complete is the data collection form. Anybody who spends over $750,000 has to submit something to the federal government for that. The next area there is the audit communication letter. This is our communication with you as a board and with management. Just pleased to report, we didn't encounter any significant difficulties during the audit. It technically was our first year audit, and so, we did ask for a lot, and we may have dug a little deeper than maybe some other auditors might have. But we got everything that we asked for. Staff didn't limit us in any way. They're very helpful. Just some other items here, no disagreements with management. And then some of the significant estimates can be found in the audit communication letter. We did propose some audit adjustments. I wouldn't say that these are material overall. There was an entity that had been completed and should have been in use, and so depreciation would have started. So there's $972,000 of depreciation that was recognized. And then on a couple of other entities, Pecan and Spring Hill, we did have some adjustments there, but those were a lot less. But for the overall Opportunity Home audit, those are not material. The next area there's we did have some recommendations. I'll go over those if you want. Otherwise, you can see them in the audit communication letter. And I tell the housing authorities, all affordable housing, that we're gonna find issues no matter where we are. Because you have so many people in the participants' files, and I don't think we'll ever have a perfectly clean audit where all the HAP is calculated correctly, that kind of thing. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a total count of how many deficiencies you found?
Total deficiencies. So it depends on what item. So most of these samples are based on a sample of 40. And so, some of them, really the audit communication letter will tell you how many of each. It's a smaller letter that you should have received called the audit communication letter. And those start on they start at the bottom of page 4 and then 5 and 6.
So let me rephrase my question.
Okay.
So you said there were about a number of 40. Were there any that had deficiencies over 20, like over 20 deficiencies?
No, okay. No. I'd say based on the recommendations we have, like the inspections are probably the key area, especially emergency inspections. You're required to, if you go and do an inspection, and there's something life-threatening as far as like a smoke detector or carbon monoxide, exposed wires, something like that, then it's supposed to be corrected within 24 hours, which, means that you have to make sure it's corrected within 24 hours. But in a lot of cases here, we couldn't see that was done. It was done, possibly 2 or 3 weeks later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have a
Sure.
question about
I believe you go out probably every 5 years. It's like a 5-year RFQ. Right. There are no requirements to, like in the SEC and all that, like there's no requirement. The HUD does limit like a contract to a maximum of 5 years is the thing. So then after that, you just have to do a RFQ. But nothing precludes you from selecting the same firm for anything, really.
He answered my question anyway. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, we have stayed with the firm for over the 5 years, but what's required at that point is that we have to rotate the audit partner. So the person charged with overall over the engagement would have to be rotated. So there'd be fresh eyes at the highest level at the firm.
That is exactly the question I was asking. Thank you.
That would be an internal policy, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I think those are all the questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to request a motion to approve Resolution 6910. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
First and second acquired. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay. Motion passes. Item number 10, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6911, authorizing the Hemisphere Village Apartments debt payoff and limited partner interest acquisition. Bradford McMurray, Chief Asset Management Officer. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners. My name is Brad McMurray, and I'm the Chief Asset Management Officer. I appreciate the opportunity to bring really an exciting item to you today. This concerns the village, Hemisphere Village Apartments, and the acquisition of the ownership interest as well as the payoff of the bonds. And you can see in the first slide where this is located. It's right there on Cesar Chavez Boulevard, right across from the Hemisphere Park and what will soon be, hopefully, the Sports Arena District. And it's a really exciting opportunity. If we go to the next slide, because what this does is this is going to preserve affordable housing in the downtown area. And it's a unique property in that it's truly mixed income, in that we have 184 market units as well as 61 tax credit, of which 49 are public housing. So you've got rent based on the ability to pay, affordable rents based on the tax credit program, as well as market. So you've got a truly mixed income entity. And this was originally completed in 2010. It was rather an exciting time in 2008 when the project was closed. That's actually when I was here earlier and got to work on this project. And it was during the financial crisis, and AIG, which was a huge financial firm, provided our GIC, which is a guaranteed investment contract. So when you get the bonds and you don't use them all, Texas makes you borrow all the money up front, so you try to invest it. And they weren't sure they were going to be able to do it because of the circumstance. But we were able to get that done, and just for some added flavor, there was a hurricane that had come in, and the Capital One, their bankers were in their cars on their mobile phones because they didn't have power to be able to close the deal. So it was rather exciting. But now here we are 15 years later. If we go to the next slide, what we're asking for today is your consideration of actually acquiring. This is what you've seen many times before, acquiring the interest in the property, tax credits. This was a tax credit project, 4% tax credits with private activity bonds. And basically what this is doing is we're acquiring the investor limited partner as well as a special Class B partnership. And we're asking that you would authorize up to $2,500,000 for that, as well as to pay off the bonds, which are about 14.3. And then when you add that up with some closing costs, you're about 17 million. We're asking for authorization to use MTW funds. And with the MTW funds, we get the added benefit of creating some more affordable housing by adding to the existing 61 units another 35, which will be restricted to affordable as well. So this is really an exciting opportunity. If we go to and then also one thing, we're asking for MTW funds, but just in case, because this is kind of a turbulent time and HUD is changing requirements, while this is in our MTW plan and we don't expect any issue, just to make sure, not so we don't have to come back to you again, we have some program income from the Hope 6 at Victoria Courts, or what's now Victoria Commons, and we're asking your authorization to use that if necessary, if for some reason they adjust the amount of the MTW. And that's why you've got another, which is not typical, the Refugio Street Public Facility Corporation, and that's an additional board meeting that's added to the Las Varas because that's the current owner. And then you have the San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation, which is going to be the new entity when we acquire it. And then if we go to the next one, this is not something we're asking for your consideration today, but we wanted to give you the full three-step process. And basically, once we acquire the interest, which we anticipate by the end of this month with your approval, and also pay off the bonds, which we would do, it's not actually due until June 15th, but if we get the opportunity, we'd like to go ahead and get HUD approval and do that as soon as possible with your approval. But the next step is something that we'll bring back to you in the future. And basically that's to do some rehab work on the project. We don't have a finalized scope, but what we'd like to do is there's some roof and some foundation issues. There's been some settling, which has resulted in some of the exterior finishes. We'd like to do some amenity improvements as well as some major systems. We don't plan to do any of the interiors of the units because that's going to be covered with typical operating expenses. But again, we're going to be working with Frost Bank. It's something we'll bring back to you, but we anticipate being able to get up to $10 million to really make this a first-class property again. It's been 15 years, and now with the opportunity to really potentially raise some of these market rents based on the location and the sports arena. So we just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And is there any questions on it or anything else I can share with you?
I had a quick question, Brad. 16 years doesn't seem like too long of a time. Does this seem pretty normal for you to put in $10 million into a property like this?
Well, it's up to, this is kind of a unique situation in the fact that it's got some foundation issues, which has created other system problems. I have the benefit of being part of it. We had a full soils report. We did everything that was required, but San Antonio soils are just not ideal. And so from that standpoint, I wouldn't anticipate, we're saying up to 10 million, but we're probably looking at about 5.6 million, where about 1.6 is going to be the must-haves, almost 2 million, which is the foundation. And then the additional work. We've kind of become a victim of our own success in that 100 Labor is an outstanding property right next to it that's leasing up. And when you're looking at the brand new compared to the 15 years old, even though it's an outstanding property, it's just I want to be in the new property. So we're kind of creating a lot of competitions for ourselves, and we want to make sure that we're still marketable.
Thank you, Brad.
Would you mind, just for my own personal sanity, could you tell us what the ownership benefits are to moving forward with this resolution to Opportunity Home and why we would want to do that?
Well, basically right now we're under the limited partnership agreement, and we have to ask the investor limited partner, which is really not, I mean, they're in affordable housing, but it's more of a return on investment for them. And now that they're at the end of the 15 years, by us acquiring it, it's something that we can run ourselves. We don't have to ask permission. Like right now, we couldn't replace the management agent with their approval. And so this just gives us more freedom. We also have the potential in this particular project that it really could be a really high upswing, because if everything goes as to plan with the downtown district, we anticipate being able to increase our market rent significantly. And hopefully this is not only going to provide affordable housing and preserve it, providing more with the MTW funds, but it's also hopefully going to be a source of cash flow for the overall agency. So this, probably more than any other project, has the opportunity to provide significant cash flow in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Since there are no other questions, I request a motion to approve Resolution 6911. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 11, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6913, authorizing the inducement of the Quantum Drive Apartments project. Nicholas and Delaney. Nicholas Delaney, Project Manager, 1 Development Services and Neighborhood Revitalization, and Tim.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak just for a second here as well. And so this is and Nicholas is going to go to all the details of this, but I want to point out this particular development. It's a new developer. We haven't done business before. And we have David and JT from Dominion came down from Dallas. You can just wave or what have you. But they came down from Dallas, and I was looking them up, and they had a presentation, and they're one of the larger multifamily developers in the United States. And I think 3 years ago, they were number 1. Last year, they're like number 2. A little bit bigger than NRP, but they haven't done deals here before. And their model's a little bit different because I know the board and my CEO has asked me, bring in different developers and different business models. And this is an inducement resolution. And for the new board members, what that means is that we just give them the right to apply for bonds. And then once you get the bonds, you get tax credits as a matter of right. And this is a 4% tax credit deal, which is one of the ways you finance these deals. And so it's a non-binding resolution, but the remote here, but it's a non-binding resolution. But I wanted to point this out because on our typical developers that come to us, totally broke it, sorry about that. But typically on these deals that on the front end, there's a split of the developer fee and there's a split of the cash flow. And we take some risk on the back end, meaning the year 15, that we either acquire it for a bargain purchase price or we sell it. And what I like about this developer, and thanks for bringing this to us, that their model's a little bit different. They haven't done deals in San Antonio before because they have a little bit higher construction costs, and they provide us the funds up front whenever we bring it back to you next time, and they take the risk on the back end. So it's sort of the reverse of our typical partnership, but we like that because as we do our redevelopment of our public housing and do many of our mission-oriented things, that we'd have more of the funds on the front end. But I want to point it out just because it's a little bit different. We're excited to have these people as a new partner, but now I'm going to let Nicholas actually go off script because I took part of his presentation. But, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Well, hello. So Tim kind of went over some of the details. I'll still go over it again just to re-solidify it. But basically, I'm bringing this project to you. It's Quantum Drive. Right now, we're in the first part of the approval process is what we're asking of you. I'll just briefly explain that. Tim mentioned that as well. So what we're asking right now is just an approval to induce the project for a tax-exempt bond application for up to $70 million. This is through our entity, Las Vadas Public Facility Corporation. This grants non-binding resolution, so there's no financial obligation at this point in the process. And these are 4% and tax credits and bonds type projects. The second approval in the future would be to start negotiating terms with the housing provider, in this case Dominion. And usually it's solidified through a MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding type of agreement. And then the final approval would be the third approval, which allows the project to close, and then it would move into the construction phase. So once again, we're just asking for that first approval currently. So as mentioned by Tim, Dominion has over 50 years. They are a leading housing provider in developing affordable multifamily housing for over 50 years. This would be the first project in San Antonio, be the first time we would work with them as well. They're headquartered in Dallas, but they have regional offices around the country. As well as the Dallas field office will be our team that would work with us on this project. They've also managed and own over 40,000 units, and they've partnered with other housing authorities in Texas as well, in Austin, Houston, and Dallas, and College Station in Odessa as well. The project is located on the southwest side of San Antonio in the intersection of Quantum Drive and Southwest Loop 410. It's near Lackland Air Force Base, and it's actually directly adjacent to a Walmart Supercenter. And it's around some public amenities as well, such as Johnston Branch Library and Southwest High School. This is the project data. The project sits in City Council District 4. It's part of Southwest ISD. The project is yielded to construct approximately 400 units. Those units are income restricted to 30%, 60%, and 70%. There are no market rate units, so this is 100% affordable. There's 1 through 4 bedrooms, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms for this project. What's significant here is, and we don't see this often in most projects, but there's a higher amount of 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms, which may indicate a higher need in the area for families to house them and have access to affordable housing in that area. And once again, this is a 4% tax credit and bonds project. This is a larger project, so it can be a larger cost, but this is the breakdown. The land cost is approximately $6.3 million. Hard costs, like construction costs, are about $90.5 million, and soft costs, this is environmental, legal, et cetera, approximately $55 million. The per unit cost is approximately $379,000, and the project cost is approximately $151.8 million. These projects can yield some revenue for the housing authority, and what we do with that revenue is defined here on this slide, as you may have seen before. So any proceeds from this project will help support very low-income residents by preserving, expanding, and sustaining affordable housing and resident services. So some of those initiatives are outlaid on there, what we would do with those funds, such as preserving and upgrading existing public housing units, as well as providing supportive services for residents. Okay. Is there any other questions or any questions so far?
Thank you for your presentation. First question, the transit.
Yeah, absolutely.
How close will it be to the nearest bus stop?
I have it here. I have that ready for you.
Thank you.
Somewhere here.
You said you were ready for me.
1 second. If not, I'll get it for you. Okay. I know it's near a bus stop. I think it's directly adjacent to it, near the Walmart Center. I think it's about 1,000 feet away. And I can ask the developer as well. But it's on Route 611 for VIA, and it's at the corner of Juneau Landing and Sol Terrace, and it's 1,100 feet away from the.
You were very ready. Is it an accessible path to get there?
It is accessible. So the actual project itself will have an accessible design through all the amenities for the project, as well as an accessible route to the bus stop.
Thank you so much. And you bring me to my next question, the amenities. I don't see them listed here. Can you go over a few of them, please?
I can. I know we're in the early phase. I'll actually bring the developer to discuss that.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for your question. Good to meet you all. So in the, common spaces, amenities, we'll have a clubhouse. This being our first project in San Antonio, we'll probably go with a bit of a larger footprint on it. It'll have, leasing offices for our full-time staff. It'll have a fitness center, business center, community room, dedicated service provider room. And then we'll have probably some sort of a sun deck going out back, pool, chairs, pool furniture, and then some sort of game and playground area. Usually we try to program that to, what people seem to be into in the area and sort of feedback we get as we go through the community process. And then in unit, we'll have, in-unit washer dryer free of charge, which we see a lot of the competitive properties in our area don't really offer. Stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, hardwood flooring, good, high quality cabinets, low flow plumbing fixtures, things like that. Also, when we go into these communities, which open to any suggestions, but we try to provide an amenity that we think is unique and might be a good fit for the community and the feedback we get. So an example is a project we did with the Housing Authority in Austin. We provided a community garden, which at the request of one of the council members there. And we've also done free in-unit Wi-Fi for residents in the past too.
Thank you for answering. And you actually concluded with what I wanted to say is it's very important to go into the community, find out what the needs are there to provide those services that are needed. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I also have a question for the development team. I'm interested in the per unit cost, which is significantly higher than what we see with a lot of the developments that we're inducing. And I'd like to know a little bit more about your financing structure and your long-term expectations around this property that allow you to invest substantially higher in the construction.
Mm-hmm. The costs are partially inflated because I think the way we're underwriting it is a cash collateralized bond structure where you'll basically have like 2 construction loans instead of 1 effectively. So we're double counting on interest a little bit, which probably inflates it by about $20,000 a unit, but still pretty high. We are in a QCT DDA area basis boost on this one, which allows us to support more of the costs. So that's, the federal subsidy, they increase it by 30%, which helps with that sort of thing. Also, we being a larger company, having, 40,000 units under management that we own a good portion of, we, make sales every year. We, after 20 plus years of owning the property, but we make sales every year. We make, developer fees. We have different revenue streams effectively. So that allows us to build on the front end at not a huge profit margin basically, and then sort of sustain it through the long term. And there's other things that really appeal to us in that area about this area we're building in. So specifically, we're a really data-driven company and we want to build in areas where there's high demand because there's not a lot of cash flow from these properties. So it makes it better and more viable long term. So we found in looking in this area that over 60% of the households in the 5 nearest zip codes are paying significantly more than the tax credit rent, over 10% more. And then when you go into the 3 and 4 bedroom units, it's 80 or 90%. So it's kind of that combination of, a little financial engineering and then just some of the demographic factors and demand and sort of how the company is structured that allow us to look at it more through a long-term lens as opposed to a...
So because you're looking at a long-term hold for the property, you're not value engineering up front.
Exactly. So we do very little value engineering, and there's a lot of construction things we put in our properties that a lot of other developers don't do. So it's a high-quality product. It looks high quality like a lot of the other apartment deals you guys are involved in. But there's also a lot of things that maybe aren't noticeable but go into the budget. So we do solid core doors. We do sound mats in the units. So when families, kids run, it's not disturbing the people who they share a wall with. We do moisture proofing on the roofs. We do a lot of like preventive maintenance, like hedging and like rock mulch and stuff like that. Things that add up to a lot more cost, but maybe from like an onlooker, they don't see as much. And we invest heavily in the properties on an annual basis too, which I'm sort of downplaying, but repairs and maintenance is one thing, but capital improvements, there's a good amount of that too. So when you combine them, a property of this size is probably looking close to $1 million in annual upkeep. So
thank you.
Like 400 units, but.
Not a question, but a kudos. There's an epidemic of family homelessness in San Antonio, and by far the #1 reason that is listed is the lack of affordable housing. This brightens my heart to see a project like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can ask our development partner to talk a little bit about City Council and City Council Committee engagement and also with the actual City Councilman for District 4.
Yeah, so the property is zoned under, there's a recent Senate Bill 840, which allows for multifamily on commercial zone property. And the city has, adopted that policy from what we understand. But still, for these tax credit projects in Texas, you have to get what's called a resolution of no objection from the local unit of government, basically saying, we're aware you're doing a tax credit deal and we don't object to you doing it. So as part of that, we've engaged, with the city council member, his zoning person, and his chief of staff, and also staff at the city, and walked them through the project. The process for obtaining this resolution of no objection, which, in conjunction with your guys' approval and that approval, those are effectively the approvals we need to make the project happen. We go first through basically a subcommittee, which is their Planning Community Development Committee. We went there a week ago, 2 weeks ago. No problems, unanimous approval. City council members in support. He's also the chair of that committee, I believe. And then we're going to city council in 2 weeks for the final approval. So.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, before you take your seat, and I should have asked this earlier. Of all of your units, how many of them will be designed for families with disabilities?
So transparently, we do 5%, which is sort of the federal requirement. But that's just kind of what the prescription is. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments? Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve Resolution 6913. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a first, second?
Second.
First and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, and now we will move on to discussion items. Update and discussion regarding the proposed 2026-2027 MTW agency plan. Nicholas Tennessee, MTW and Strategy Analyst. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I will be presenting our proposed FY 2026-2027 Moving to Work, or MTW plan, and some of the updates and policy changes that we are proposing for this upcoming fiscal year. I'm Nicholas Tennessee. I'm the MTW and Strategy Analyst here for the organization. And so starting off, since I know we have a few new commissioners, I did want to go over what Moving to Work is and what the MTW designation is. So Opportunity Home San Antonio is one of 39 originally designated MTW designated agencies. This is a federal designation that comes directly from HUD. We've been with the MTW program since 2000 and received full flexibility in this program since 2009. So it does sit at the bedrock of how our organization operates. And what this designation does is allow Opportunity Home to deliver our mission, vision, and values in ways that are a little bit different and more flexible than other standard operating public housing agencies. So the main tools that HUD gives us with this designation is regulatory waivers. These waivers are what we call MTW activities that are submitted every year in an annual planning cycle, which allows us to waive certain federal regulations to test out new innovative ways to deliver our services both programmatically and through policy. And then the second major tool that HUD gives us is funding fungibility. So the funding fungibility is a different way in which we receive funds from HUD. So standard housing authorities receive funds in various blocks, and those blocks need to be used in the very specific way that HUD sets it for. With our agency, we receive one block grant in one quote-unquote bucket, and then that bucket is then allocated outwards every single year as our local needs as our local city needs, right? So we're able to kind of push those funds out in ways that we determine are best use for our residents and for our programs and for our policies. So some of these uses of funds get allocated throughout the public housing portfolio and operating expenses, our housing choice voucher operating expenses, as well as capital improvements across our public housing portfolio. And then we have MTW flexible uses. So when we talk about the MTW flexible uses and those regulatory waivers that we call MTW activities, what happens is when we submit for these MTW activities to waive certain federal regulations, they need to meet one, if not more, of 3 statutory objectives that HUD sets aside for us. One of them is cost efficiency or effectiveness, so being more effective and efficient with our federal dollars. Another is housing choice, so increasing housing choices for low-income families across our city. And the third is self-sufficiency, so giving incentives to families, able-bodied families who are looking for work or seeking work, preparing to work, in policies or programs that can assist them to achieve that economic self-sufficiency. So going into the timeline of this, the Strategy, Data, and Innovation Department, who oversees the facilitation of the MTW designation, begins planning in the end of every single year. So the fall, October, November, and December, we begin soliciting resident feedback through various strategic planning surveys. We also start aligning our MTW plan priorities around our strategic plan, as well as the strategic plan survey evaluation results. And then we begin coordinating internally with our operating departments to get program policy updates, to get capital improvement plans and housing expansion plans put together. From there, in January, we then draft the proposed plan that we are expecting to submit to HUD. And then by mid-February, we submit it for public comment. HUD requires that we submit it for public comment for 30 days. So this year, our public comment period began on February 18th. It is currently out for public comment as of now, and the public comment period will close on March 20th. Throughout these 30 days, the SDI department visits various public housing properties as well as HCV residents to give them the same updates that I'm giving you today. And I'll go over in the next slide kind of which properties we targeted for this cycle. And then from there, once the public comment period closes, we wrap everything up, put it into a final draft for approval by the board in April, to then get submitted to HUD by April 15th, which is our annual deadline. From there, throughout May and June, we then address any HUD questions or clarifying comments that they may have, to then ideally get HUD approval before July 1st, which is the beginning of our organization's fiscal year. So then by July 1st, we are able to implement that MTW plan. So for this public comment period, as I stated, February 18th, it's going through March 20th. We are currently in the public comment period. During this time, our email is mtw@homesa.org for any member of the public who is reviewing our public documents to submit their comments to that email throughout this entire time frame. They can also mail comments directly to our central office here at 818 South Flores Street with attention to our Strategy, Data, and Innovation Department. So our outreach plan for this coming cycle, every single year we develop different outreach plans to try to target different properties to make sure we're not going to the same property every single year, since we have so many public housing properties. So this year we targeted 6 public housing properties to hold resident consultations. They're listed there: Lila Cockrell, Villa Verdemendi, Casiano, Madonna, OP Schnabel, and Fair Avenue. We will also hold 1 HCV resident consultation here at our central office. We also hold an internal staff consultation as well as a closed session with our resident advisory board. And then we also record the entirety of this presentation that we're giving today and post it online for any member of the public to view at any point during the open comment period. And then we post marketing materials throughout our staff weekly, our resident newsletters, as well as social media to let as many members of the public know that this public comment period is going on. So moving into our proposals for this upcoming fiscal year, Opportunity Home is proposing 1 new activity for FY 2027 for HUD approval. We have titled it the elimination of negative rent. So currently, the current policy is that if a household's utility allowance, or UA, is more than their TTP or calculated total tenant payment, the household receives a reimbursement check or a negative rent check. Under this activity that we are proposing that all non-elderly and non-disabled households with negative rents would no longer receive the reimbursement check. The current UA and TTP calculation will remain the same until it hits kind of that $0 floor, and then that reimbursement check would no longer be issued. Elderly and disabled households would, of course, be exempt from this change. This activity is really pushing with, really following HUD mandates to be more cost-effective with our federal dollars, as well as to help our able-bodied households achieve economic self-sufficiency. So, of course, our elderly disabled will be exempt from this activity, since we are not working towards self-sufficiency with those households. We are more working to have them age in place comfortably. So if and when approved by HUD, an exact start date has not been set by the organization yet. We would need to put our programs in place on the back end with our finance departments, and internal operating departments to get it set, but we would keep residents informed of when, if it were to go into effect, when it would. Moving into our closed out activities, every single year we have the option of ongoing MTW activities to close them out if they are no longer working or no longer needed. This year we will end one MTW activity entitled the elimination of earned income disregard. This is just a full policy activity, so there is no effect on our residents by closing it out. Updated federal regulations have kind of nulled the policy language within this activity, so it's just no longer needed. It's become obsolete. Going into repositioning and redevelopment. So Opportunity Home may begin the process of repositioning certain public housing communities in fiscal year 2027. The communities that are currently under review would be Terrytown, Villahermosa, Westway, and the lofts at Marie McGuire. The reason for this repositioning and redevelopment is using current HUD optional programs, including Section 18 as well as the rental assistance demonstration to reposition our public housing properties so that the funding that comes in for them comes in through a different route, right? So we're able to kind of redevelop these properties and bring them back up to standard, especially with many of our public housing properties with significant age on them and need significant upgrades and substantial rehabilitation. Current federal funding does not keep up with enough monies to be able to upkeep those properties and bring them up to modern day standards. And so with this repositioning avenue that we are able to take, we would be able to bring those properties up to standard through a different funding mechanism coming in through HUD. Once aside, these communities, as I stated, are under review. Nothing has been made official yet. We're currently in the process of physical needs assessments on our properties to determine which properties we want to target the most. If and when a property is selected, our internal staff would visit those specific properties, visit with the residents at least twice in meetings to give them updates on what's going on, answer all of their questions, and give them all the clarifying information that they would need to understand what kind of process is going on. So as I stated, nothing has been fully solidified yet. We just have to include this in our upcoming plan to ensure that when we do submit these applications to HUD, that they are approved so that we show that we were planning on this. Looking into our preservation, we have multiple properties that were initially developed under the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC, program that are nearing the end of their kind of tax credit compliance. And so with that, what our internal staff begins doing is reviewing the properties to determine if we need to invest in them to bring them into our portfolio. The properties are listed there. Hemisphere is obviously already happening, but we have multiple other properties that could potentially begin coming online into our development or into our portfolio so that we can maintain the affordability at these properties. So we anticipate preserving a little over 1,600 units across these properties in the coming fiscal year when we bring them into our portfolio. And then for public housing investments over the next 5 years, we do plan to invest more than $48 million in capital repairs to extend the useful life at that 30 properties, touching on almost 3,000 units, a little less. And then every single year, our community development initiatives has an FSS action plan. There are some proposed changes this coming year. There are 7 revisions. Most of these revisions are aimed at just aligning programming policies with current rules and HUD regulations, as well as enhancing consistency in how escrow accounts and support services are managed, as well as updating program reporting to ensure participant information reflects the current population. The entire breakdown of the FSS proposed changes is listed in a separate summary that you should have received and is available publicly for the public to view these proposals. From here, we'll move into the policy updates, and I will hand it off to each of the operating portfolios directors to kind of give you a little bit more information on what those policy proposal changes are.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Rodriguez, Director for our voucher program, and Ruth Bautista is also here, the Director for Public Housing, and we're going to go over the policy changes for our directive departments. As a part of the MTW plan, we also have to do our admin plan and ACOP, or the admissions and occupancy policy, as a part of the process, because whenever there's MTW policy changes or federal changes, we do have to update our policies to reflect and match. Just to go over basic information, normally when there are proposed changes to our policy or programs, we do have to review to make sure we're accurately having our policy reflect what federal regulations require. Usually federal regulations will have updates that are required to be processed immediately, and then they give you time to update your policy at your policy cycle. So some of these are going to be a part of that. It's also to improve any problematic issues, make sure there's no redundancies in your policy, and then also as you're going through your year, you're reviewing your residents' needs, right, on your public housing side based on lease information or policy, as well as on the voucher side as we go through the program, and any MTW activities as we change them to make those needs for the residents. So this slide kind of goes over how we come about the process of updating our policy. So HUD regulations normally will come out. There's general policy. PIH notices will also have general changes that occur during the year. And in those notices, they'll tell you when the changes have to occur in process and then when you must update your policy. And then our policy is where we're going to reflect in there when we're making it effective as the July 1, or if we're already doing it, it's in order to make sure that we're falling in line with that policy to make sure the policy and practice are together. So there are certain rules that we want to make sure we highlight, right? PHA must not, and may not are mandatory rules. So normally those are ones you have to make sure you put in your policy, and you're not allowed to make any changes to those. There are discretionary rules, and that's normally where there are may. So if they say that a housing authority may do something, you specifically have to put something in your policy to say what you will do. And so it leaves it up to the housing authority for a little bit of wiggle room to decide what's going to be best for your community. Now, we have it also in our system where we have our Opportunity Home defined program rules. And so if we have MTW activities, we have to make sure that we have those specific program defined rules as a part of our policy as well. And usually they must be clearly defined. So this is to kind of give you an idea, right, to show, so HUD regulations will show that 24 CFR, it's going to reference the specific regulation that's a part of it on the reference code, and usually the section header. Now we have our blue section, which we'll have gray and blue, which will be MTW policies and Opportunity Home policies. So sometimes we have MTW programs, and then we have non-MTW programs, and we do have to reflect those in our policy, and we do try to color code them, and at the bottom of each page will be a little reminder that this gray one is HCV policy, blue is the MTW policy, and so forth. Now, to go over the information that's going to be in the packets and the slides, red text are usually revisions. If it's a strike-through, that means that it's being removed from the policy. And then if it's underlined, that means we're adding it in. You're going to see a lot of information in here that's going to be added in on the HCV side, and I'll go over that as we get to each section. Now, the admin plan is over the HCV policy or the voucher side. ACOP is going to be over the public housing, and then lease is a part of the public housing as well, since they're the landlords over those properties. And we do have them available on our website as well for anybody who's watching. So for our proposed admin plans, this is going to be reflective only to the voucher program. So these will not reflect under public housing. Ruth will go over the public housing ones, but these will be specific to the voucher program. So our first change that we have is that for our waiting list side. Currently, we have multiple waiting lists for each project-based development. And in the beginning, that worked for us because we only had 2 or 3. And so a person could go online and they applied for it. However, as we've gained project-based communities, we've noticed that many people, when they're going to apply, do not understand the differences. They're either applying for all of them, and then when they're like, oh no, I didn't want that one, I wanted a different property. In order to try to make it easier for our residents, we're going to centralize our project-based voucher waiting list, which is much like our regular voucher waiting list. But on this one, what we'll do is we'll have a family property or general occupancy waiting list, and then an elderly specific. So if it's 62 years of age and older, because we do have some project-based communities that are elderly only, not elderly mixed. So it's not that 18 years of age or older with a disability or 55 and older, they're specifically 62 years of age and older. So we will have those 2 different types, but to centralize it, to make it easier for applicants to apply and understand what they're applying for. Next one we have is our project-based voucher rent limits. And so what previously there was policy already in there. We are just clarifying how we're coming up with the rent calculation. There's a section in there that talks about how you would set it if it's the FMR or like 110%, however you decide, up to the Housing Authority's discretion. And so we're putting in that discretionary information of how, when we come to the board and we're setting our MAFMRs and SAFMRs each year, which is the fair market rents, whether it's the small area or for the whole area. When you as the board are approving that, that's what we're going to set as one of the factors when we're reviewing those project-based rents. So we're just clarifying in the policy for that. This next section is related to request for tenancy approvals, or RTAs, and it's revising the language to make sure that we're doing it as our current process, which is submitting it electronically. It is still accepted many different ways, fax, email, but it's just not accepted like in office unless it's like under a reasonable accommodation. We're trying to work with a disabled family. But we're trying to reflect that policy to make sure that it's the corrections, when we send it to the landlord, they're supposed to submit it back to us electronically. For our VASH participants. This one is to update our policy. There were many changes that happened under the VASH program within the last year that required us to make many changes during the year. And so they set it to where minimum rent was changed for the VASH program specifically. The voucher time frame, when a voucher is to expire, the process is related to voucher expiration and what you needed to do for contact. All of that has already been actually in process, but we needed to make sure that our policy updated it within this policy cycle as a part of those federal regulations. Owner responsibilities, this one is a clarification in policy as we're working through our landlords and a part of our IRS requirements for making sure that we're paying out our landlords correctly and setting them up in our systems. The forms that are required from those landlords in order to be set up, we want making sure that it's listed in the policy so that they have that understanding, because we do get a lot of questions from landlords. Where do you have it? What do I need to submit? And so it's easier if we put it in the policy to send it to them so that they understand what they need to submit to us. And I do apologize. If I'm going too fast, let me know and I will slow down. So this next one is our college and university assistance program. Is a part of the MTW policies. There was a small change in one of our activities where we're including universities now. It used to be only we were doing ACCD, the community colleges. As a part of our current process, we are including now 2 universities, which is Texas A&M and UTSA. I'm sorry. UT San Antonio, I forgot they changed their name. And so as a part of that process, we're trying to include now universities that might have homeless students to be referred to us under this program. And we had to update our policy in order to make sure those universities are included in there before we could start accepting the referrals, because it does have to be a part of our MTW plan, activity, and policy before we can start that process. And then it also extended the policy to do 1 year after our graduation. Previously, we wanted to make sure that it had, we did 6 months. So if a person on this program, it is a time-limited program while they're in school. So previously, if they graduated, they could get up to 6 months after graduation to receive assistance, and then they would be removed from the program as a part of like a self-sufficiency and then go to the next student that may need it. But during the time period that we were running the program, we realized that 6 months might not be enough. So that 1 year is what was then updated in order for this activity. The activity was updated, but our policy was not. So we needed to make sure that in this one, we updated the policy to reflect that 1 year. Sorry. So this one is the minimum rent for our MTW activities. So under our regular HCV program, minimum rent is $50. As a part of the MTW activity that we have for a rent reform, we did not have a minimum rent specified in there. It is proposed now as a part of our cost-saving measures is required under all of our PIH notices that have been coming out within the last year, is to review your minimum rent. And if you have a 0 minimum rent, in order to bring it up to that minimum of $50. And so that was one of the changes that we are making in the proposal, that it would match our HCV, because our HCV, our regular voucher program, is a $50 minimum rent, while our MTW was 0. So this would make it to match so that there's no confusion as well in processing. This one for debts owed. So this one is a one policy change. Previously during COVID, we allowed for anybody to get onto the program if they owed a debt to our housing authority, that they could sign a repayment agreement. This is not a standard practice under normal housing authorities. Many of those COVID waivers that HUD allowed are gone. And so this policy is reflecting back to the normal standard process of if a person does owe a balance to any program, that they would not be able to get onto the voucher program unless they've cleared that debt, whether it's paying it or working with that agency to clear the debt, not necessarily that they have to pay it, if that makes sense. But so this is updating that policy to reflect more towards the regular processes and regulations that are under the federal guidelines. So, sorry, let me take a breather. We have a lot of changes. So non-elderly disabled, we've had this program for a long time. And we only had a very, very small section under our waiting list related to NED, which is non-elderly disabled vouchers. There was a slew of notices that came out this year where they changed lots of regulations related to NED, which is very different from the standard HCV. And we did not have a separate information related to it because it was all same as the standard housing choice voucher. Now with these changes, we do have to have a separate section related to non-elderly disabled. And so we have to make sure that we put the information. There are two different types of non-elderly disabled. So we do have in the policy that they're the second type, which is related to nursing homes, which is specific referrals under a nursing home process. You have to be awarded specific non-elderly disabled vouchers for that. We do not have those. And so we do have it in the policy that we were not awarded those, but we did include some language related to it just so people understand the difference. Utility reimbursements, as Nicholas went over earlier, there's that MTW policy, or MTW activity that's being proposed as a part of the public comment. So if that public goes through, then the policy does need to reflect that as well. So these policy changes are in order to reflect that same information, what we would do in order for the policy, and then when that would be taken into effect, as it said in the MTW proposal, would be especially after, like, we would have to send out notices related to it, and it would take a later effective date rather than July 1, but we do have to have it in the policy as of July 1 when it's effective. Okay, and then this next one, which if you have the packet on all the changes of the admin plan, is the biggest one. So our housing authority never previously went through rental assistance demonstration. As a part of repositioning, if any housing authority does go through that or is interested in it, does have to have a section in their administrative plan related to it, because as a part of some of the processes, if you were to do a repositioning and you were to either do a project-based rental assistance agreement at the property or a project-based voucher program, you have to have policy related to it if you do a project-based. So we are including language, which is a whole chapter related to this process for project-based if we were to project-based during the process of repositioning under the public housing process. This may not occur like in the next year or 2 or 5. However, we do have to have the policy related to it as we're going through the process of considering it under repositioning. And so you'll see the whole chapter is all red lines and nothing striked out because it is a brand new chapter. So those are all of the admin plan changes. If you'd like, you can ask me questions now, or if you would like Ruth to go over hers, and then you can ask questions together.
I would like to ask a question. For the proposed plan revisions for the DEBS O2 Opportunity Home.
Yes.
So if a resident were to owe, because obviously low-income residents only earn a certain amount, and so if a resident owed $5,000, $10,000, they would not be eligible to get their Section 8 voucher or voucher?
Correct. So if they're a current resident or a previous resident, right? Current residents, we normally tell them to go back to the property. We give them 10 business days to go back to the property to work with the property and determine maybe if there's something wrong with their ledger, if they need to have any review of it. If it's a previous resident and they left the program, then they would have to either work with public housing to determine if some of those charges could be dropped in order to bring maybe the balance down, work with them to clear that debt, or pay something down towards it in order to, what is that term? Settle the debt in order to clear it from the system. But yes, under federal regulations, there is the regulations state that a person who has a debt to a housing authority, whether it's your current or another housing authority, if they owe a debt, they're not eligible to receive a voucher.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
I have one additional question. Are any of these changes in response to some of the documentation challenges that we found through internal review of files?
So some of it is. So part also with the COVID changes that we had when we were doing the repayment agreement, some of that repayment agreement, part of it was. However, right, the regulations also kind of supersede that part. But other changes that we had, making sure that the policy is being clarified, the policy is being corrected, or changes that occurred, we do, whenever we go through that process, we do try to clarify policy to make sure that we're correcting any, like if an audit occurs and we notice any errors that continuously occur, there's training on staff, but also reviewing policy to make sure that policy is up to date, or if we're doing something and it's supposed to be this way and the policy is not correct, then we have to correct our policy.
Thank you.
Another question for the CHAP program. What universities before this new revision is going to be implemented? Did we have any prior universities? Now that we're going to be adding Alamo colleges, Texas A&M.
So previously, it was only St. Philip's and Palo Alto College, and then we increased it to all of the ACCD communities, the Alamo community colleges, so like Northeast Lakeview, SAC. And they're going to be so upset with me that I forgot their other college. Northwest Vista. And so we opened it up to the rest of those community colleges, but we were only doing community colleges because the time limit that was on it. And then as we were going through the discussion, many of those students were transferring to university from there, and so they were losing their assistance as a part of that process. So as we were going through, then we reached out to the universities, and some of the universities were already reaching out to us as well. UTSA was one, in order to see if they could be a partner in it as well. And so UTSA and TAM USA, or Texas A&M, are the first two that we're talking with right now, because we do have to do memorandums of understanding and agreement as a part of the process. There's many things that they have to do on their side as well to be in compliance as a part of it. And so they're going to try to see if this pilot, if they're able to be in compliance with it. If they're not, then they might not continue with us. But as they go through that, we'll have our lessons learned and we'll reach out to other universities if possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll pass it to Ruth if there's no other questions for me.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We're going to be reviewing our proposal for the ACOP for public housing. Our first one is going to focus on our applicants, its other permitted reasons for denial. And this basically reinforces or is proposing that applicants who owe money to Opportunity Home cannot enter into a repayment agreement at the time of admission. So we are also in alignment with the voucher program. All outstanding balances related to Opportunity Home programs must be paid in full before an applicant can be admitted into public housing. Our second proposal surrounds the eligibility for continued occupancy. This change does affect our residents. It is proposing to update the require that public housing residents must pay all outstanding debts to Opportunity Home in full before being approved for a transfer to another public housing unit or community. Residents will not be permitted to enter into a repayment agreement to meet the eligibility requirement. So right now, we do have residents are able to transfer in between the properties at any given time if it's an eligible transfer. This is proposing that before they're eligible to transfer, that they must settle the debt and make sure that they meet that eligibility. Of course, if it falls along the lines of a reasonable accommodation or a VAWA transfer, that is an exception. Our next revision is a termination to breach of repayment agreement. This does affect our residents. So we're proposing under this rule that Opportunity Home must end assistance if a resident does not follow the terms of a repayment agreement. Right now, the wording is may, opposed to that it's a requirement. Our next revision focuses on family debts to Opportunity Home. This one does affect residents as well. We're proposing that residents will not be eligible for a repayment agreement for debts that are not related to unreported income or underreported income. Existing repayment agreements for other debt types will remain in place until they are paid in full or broken. So right now, our repayment agreements can encompass delinquent rent, maintenance charges, move-out charges, excess utilities. Under this revision, repayment agreements will only be extended to residents that have unreported income or underreported income. And those existing repayment agreements that we have right now will not affect they remain in place until they're paid in full. Our next proposal is alternatives to termination of tenancy. This also affects residents. It'll be updated to allow repayment agreements only in cases involving unreported or underreported income. That means that the repayment agreements may be used instead of termination only in qualifying cases related to unreported or unreported income. Our next proposed revision speaks to interim re-exams due to increase in income. So it will be updated to require residents to report any increase in their monthly income of $200 or more within 10 business days after the change takes effect. Our proposed ACOP revision speaks to the number of unit offers. This update will be updated to state that Opportunity Home will only extend 1 unit offer to an applicant. We currently have 2 unit offers. We were thinking that maybe that would have changed. Maybe the applicants would accept the secondary. What we found out is that there wasn't an increase in the occupancy by extending another unit offer. The majority of the time it was in the same community. Our next revision surrounds utility reimbursement, and I know that Nicholas and Stephanie spoke to that earlier. That will be updated to align with our moving to work activity in regards to elimination of negative rent. So if approved, our utility reimbursement payments would end for the non-elderly and non-disabled households. This change would take effect again at a later date after required programming updates are completed. Does anyone have any questions? I'm available. Yes.
You were reading my face. So under the termination, is there a time frame given? I don't remember which slide we were on, but you were talking. Keep going. I don't think it was these, but that's okay.
Okay.
Is there a time frame that's given for this termination? Like, do they know that they have a certain amount of time to pay it back? Is it automatic?
For a
They're gonna
repayment
be terminated
agreement? So right now, we have repayment agreements that they need to abide by, right? They sign into a repayment agreement. If it's under $3,000, that is the maximum threshold. We actually have 2 repayment agreements that are actually active. Those are from the pandemic era and those that are after. So if there is a breach, prior to that, there's a contract that our residents enter. So if they breach that contract, meaning that they don't pay their initial 10% down payment or they skip a payment within that time frame, let's say their rent is $100, but their repayment agreement installment is $40. If they default on the repayment agreement, they are issued a RPA default letter to say, you've defaulted on your repayment agreement, you need to make good on it. At that time, if the resident is not able to, then that's when we issue a 30-day notice to vacate.
So the letter doesn't say you have 10 days, you have till this date. The letter just says you have to make good on it.
Well, it actually states when their amount is due, just like when their rent is due in the first 5 business days, so is the amount of the repayment agreement.
Okay.
So it's on the repayment agreement. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The last question is, can you give me an example of the new 1 unit offer? You said it was 2, but now it's 1. Can you give me an example of
Yes.
what that looks like?
So prior, it used to be 1 unit offer when our wait list was very, very large. We moved to be client-focused to extend 2 unit offers. We were receiving feedback from the resident or from the applicants that they declined their first unit offer because they didn't like the area or they had a reasonable accommodation or there was a conflict of interest from a prior relationship. And so we went ahead and we extended 2 unit offers. So the first unit offer, they could decline it without a good excuse. They could say, I'll skip, I'll wait for the second one. I'm hoping, and they could have a preference. They can have a preference on a specific side of town if they have their family and their support system. But what we were discovering is that the majority of the time for the second offer, it was at the same unit or within the same community or the same area. So it really wasn't serving our applicants, and then it wasn't increasing our occupancy at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I just ask a process question with regard to changes in income? And I realize the increase in monthly income impacts their rent payment, but a decrease in monthly income would also impact. So is there a similar requirement regarding reporting decrease in income?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, our residents have within 10 business days, they're guided to go ahead and report any change of income, whether it's an increase or a decrease.
Thank you.
I did want to speak to, thank you, Stephanie, to the unit offers. Again, there are those exceptions if an applicant has or is submitting or requesting a reasonable accommodation, or about what we do accommodate them when we do extend the second offer. Okay, and so the next part is the proposed revisions to the public housing lease. Our first one surrounds the recording on property. This does affect our residents. Right now, currently in our lease, it doesn't speak to anything about recording or the cameras. So to protect the privacy and peaceful enjoyment of residents, the lease will begin prohibiting recording of residents or staff without their knowledge and consent. Now, an exception can be made if there's criminal activity and the residents are taking out their phone and they're recording to submit to law enforcement. That's an exception. But right now, for recording on property, this is a proposal that we're making for the lease. Our second proposal surrounds doorbell cameras. Again, this does affect our residents. The new language is proposed to be added to our lease to allow residents to install doorbell cameras with prior written approval from Opportunity Home. If approved, the residents must agree to the rules and they sign an acknowledgement form before installing the doorbell camera. And so that's relevant to the Ring, let's say, camera, Ring doorbell. Our second lease revision speaks to our mini portable washer and dryers. So the new language that will be added is prohibiting the use of mini or portable washer and dryers. This rule helps ensure that the electrical and the plumbing systems are used safely and properly. It also prevents damage to the building systems caused by unauthorized equipment. So we were noticing and we're having reports that our residents were having the disposable mini portable washer and dryers in some of our high rises, even though on each floor we do have washer and dryer ability for them. We do have facilities for all our residents to do washing and drying at the high rises. Our second proposal is surrounding keys and methods of entry to the premises. This does affect our residents. So to improve the property security, residents, we are proposing they must keep control of their keys, fobs, and other access devices. They are not to copy any of the fobs or their keys or share with anyone that does not live in the unit. And this also leads to that they may not be able to prop the doors open or allow unauthorized individuals to follow them into the premises, such as tailgating, as we know that we're experiencing, that's a feedback that we're experiencing, let's say at Victoria Plaza or at Lewis Chatham. So this is a way to deter that type of activity. Again, if it's a reasonable accommodation and our residents have a provider or family that need access to keys, that will always be considered. Our third lease revision speaks to Opportunity Home maintenance systems. So this one is actually to prohibit residents from tampering or adjusting any of the Opportunity Home systems or equipments. So residents are going to be required to issue or call in a work order to property staff so that we can go ahead and address that. They're not permitted to contact, they're not permitted to contact the outside vendors for repairs without prior written approval from Opportunity Home. And this updates ensures that all repairs meet Opportunity safety and quality standards. We're experiencing that sometimes our residents were calling our vendors to ask for updates, to ask for documentation. Maybe they would call in another vendor that they wanted, a friend or family, whatever the case is, to actually come and do work within Opportunity Home, and we have to make sure that they are within REAC or Inspire standard, and they're vetted through our vendor process. Our next lease revision surrounds solicitation. So the new language has been added to prohibit placing signs or flyers or advertisements in common areas without prior written approval. Unauthorized commercial activity or door-to-door, unapproved material being dispersed to residents will not be allowed. Now, residents may conduct surveys of other residents. Residents may not conduct surveys with other residents without management approval. Now, this is not associated with resident council. So if they're soliciting or asking questions about the community, since they're representing them, then that's not included in this. Okay. Any questions regarding the public housing lease proposed changes?
I do. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. First, the last one you talked about with prohibiting putting material. It says, e.g. resident councils, but it's not specific to resident councils. Tenants are able to organize without resident councils.
Yes, they can. However, we were experiencing that the residents sometimes would feel compelled or forced or harassed to answer maybe some of the questions that maybe other residents that were trying to solicit information about, let's say, their health or their household, their condition of their unit. This change right here was speaking directly to that. We had such an outpour of resident feedback that we felt that it was necessary to address it.
I would love to see that feedback.
Okay.
I'll keep it that's it for now.
I do have a question regarding the recording on property, and you said an exception is allowable only to document possible criminal activity. Would that be inclusive of civil rights violations?
Can you define that for me as far as?
I think it's important for all of us to have our phones ready to record what happens sometimes, and I would hate to see a tenant who's recording something that they think may be a civil rights violation or some type of activity that they think may be dangerous to a fellow tenant, and that would not be allowed.
So just to clarify, it is allowing for that, because the section where they're talking about like criminal activity or any review for like law enforcement, or if there's lease enforcement, like if they feel threatened, that it is covered, that they would be allowed. This is more of spying on your neighbor or.
I get it. I just want to make sure that someone who's trying to do the right thing and be a good citizen wouldn't be subject to some kind of penalty.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Follow up on that. So in Texas, you're only required one person to have knowledge of the recording. So can we change the language on this just a little bit to give people the leeway that they need? For example, and because it does say staff, there have been multiple times in the past, and not the recent past, but in the past, where there was a conflict of what one staff member was saying versus what the tenant was saying, and the tenant chose to record. They should be allowed to do so. They should not have to inform that they're being recorded. That's their right, in Texas, at least. So they're protecting themselves. How are they going to do that if I've seen abuses on these types of stipulations within the lease. So I'm very curious.
So in some of the resident meetings as well, because it is still public comment that we're going through the process of these as well for the changes, so they are taking down, so they'll write down that comment. I do believe they had legal review as well, because it is the one-party state, but I know Nicholas also included that as a part of some of the resident comments that we received when we went out to properties. And then when we had our resident advisory board meeting. They, I think one kind of asked about that to make sure we were doing a legal review on that policy. So that is one that we will be considering as a part of the public comment process.
Any more questions? Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioners.
Alrighty, thank you, Commissioners. Just to close it out, as I stated, the public comment period is ongoing. It will go through March 20th, so any member of the public is welcome to view all of our draft documents. We have not only the entirety of the MTW plan draft, but we also have executive summaries, summaries of the revisions that we went over today, as well as the FSS summary revision, just to make it a little bit easier to know where those changes are rather than reading through our very large document that we have. So all of those draft documents can be viewed at homesa.org/moving-to-work. You can also type in homesa.org/MTW and it'll take you to the same website as well to make it a little bit easier. During this entire time, you can email public. We have taken notes, of course, of any public comments that happened during our resident consultations, but you can always email your comments to mtw@homesa.org or mail them directly to our central office. As I stated, also, the video recording of this entire presentation and all the proposed changes is available on that same website as well. But just to give you a little overview of kind of where we go from here, once we are done capturing public comments and end the public comment period, we will finalize the draft MTW plan and bring it back to the board on April 1st for board approval of the MTW plan to then submit to HUD by our deadline of April 15th. And then from there, we address any HUD questions to update the plan for implementation, ideally by July 1st. And from there, we just have a final slide just for any member of the public who may be watching with our website, our email, and our mailing address as well. But if there's any questions on any other changes that I went through in the beginning, then
I just have maybe one request, if it isn't too much to ask. Is there any way for us to receive any type of information that outlines the number of residents that will be impacted by some of the most major changes and how we're going to try and mitigate those effects if they are negative? So that way we can have a better understanding of what all of these changes will do for our existing residents.
yes, we could work on getting some of that.
Thank you.
I would also like to, I don't know if it's possible to request that residents receive more than one notice, because sometimes notices do fly away, especially in our older homes like Alazana Pache Courts. Unfortunately, the notices do fly away as a prior tenant. So I would like to request, if it's possible, when the implementation happens, for residents to have this notice more than once. And also, if it's possible, for it to be put on social media, so people that do have access and can have could be able to see these implementations happening.
Yes, ma'am.
May I please piggyback off of that? Is it possible to even have info sessions? Because you all wonderfully stood there and explained it. But that's a lot.
They're confusing though, yes, no.
And we have microphones and can say, yes, I have a question. But if it's just placed on my door, or I just get it in an email, if I have access to an email, I may be absolutely lost in what I'm reading and could misinterpret what the wording is. So I would highly recommend info sessions that would allow people to get the information firsthand and be able to ask questions. And if possible, just slow down the speech just a little bit. A lot of acronyms, a lot of new information, a lot of what are you talking about? So that will be my feedback. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so during the public, I forgot to mention, so during the public comment period, at the end, before we bring it back to April board for final approval, I will list the number of residents that we had at each of our public comment presentations, as well as all of the public comments that we received. So at all of these presentations that we go in person to the public housing property, as well as here when we have our housing choice voucher resident session, we do kind of go through it as slowly as possible, right, and try to kind of explain what all the acronyms mean, right, because there's a lot of acronyms, especially in federal regulations. But from there, we always do stay on the property for at least half an hour afterwards, just with all of our policy staff as well as myself, to answer resident questions and kind of just be with the residents that do attend these info sessions. And then, of course, we work as hard as we can to try to push the video that we have recorded and posted online out for any resident who can't attend in person at a specific specific time on a specific day. And then that email, of course, besides public comments, any member of the public, anybody can email our MTW at Home SA to reach our team, who's able to answer those clarifying questions when and where needed.
I also like to add, if it's possible, to also request when these implementations are made to give accessibility to parents that are working or seniors that are at home that do not want to come here, or like if the imposition, because it is a lot of material, and if it could be simplified to the simplest term, possibly like at a third grade level, just so the information can be digestible, right? Because even with us knowing the acronyms or having some prior knowledge to public housing programs, it's like, okay, so wait, hold on, I have a question, right? And so just making sure that that information is digestible, and if possible, to either have a recorded, give accessibility so the people know where and or where. And I don't know if we could provide a period for people to start understanding, because we do serve over 85,000 people. So that's a lot of information to be digested.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so we do have those summary revisions, which help at least a little bit to make it a little bit easier to see where those revisions are, especially if we just put the draft document out for review. It's over 100 something pages, and so we try to kind of dial it down and make 1 to 2 pagers, but we're always taking comments and trying to make them as easily digestible as possible. So every year we're trying to make them more and more easy to digest. And of course, I forgot to mention, we always translate the documents into Spanish and have Spanish interpreters at all of our presentations as well.
And I have just one more question for you, or actually a clarification, if you would. Could you tell me the process, or not the process, what public comment serves for you and how you use that information in informing this process, please?
Yes, so during the public comment period, we release all of the draft documents as well as all the summaries to let any member, not only our residents, but any member of the San Antonio community, to view the documents at any point. When they submit a public comment, either stating maybe this policy might not work, or this is my experience and this is a policy that I don't think will work, or maybe I really believe in this policy. We take all of those into consideration, put them into a spreadsheet to then submit to our department. Either can answer them, or we submit them to the appropriate operating department's staff if it's something that's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse and needs to be answered by specifically a public housing staff. We'll submit it to them to get an answer. If we're not able to implement whatever the comment may be, we explain why it's not able to be implemented. And if we are able to kind of make an edit or a change to the proposed document, that's what would happen after the public comment period, so that the person who submitted it can see that that change occurred.
Thank you for that explanation.
This may be more of a comment than a question, but it does seem that there are significant proposals being floated with some regularity from HUD and other regulators. I know this is a scheduled process, but do we have any ability to respond with off-cycle? I mean, I know we're required to follow HUD guidance, but is there a possibility that we could finish all this process and then have to start over again with a significant section of work?
Yeah, so this MTW kind of serves as our annual agency plan, so it is an annual cycle. But if something significant does come up that requires a change, then we do have, as a housing authority, the ability to kind of resubmit those changes off cycle outside of the standard public comment period. It would just require another 30-day public comment cycle that's outside of this to accept those changes from HUD.
Last comment, I promise. Y'all laughing. You probably already do this, but I haven't been to one of your info sessions. Examples are wonderful. They really help to break down all of this policy talk.
Jargon.
And make it make jargon. There you go. It makes it make sense. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Will we have access to the public comments made for the MTW?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I can get. And then, as I said, when I bring it to the April board, we'll be able to give a breakdown of all the comments that were received.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to discussion item number 13, update and discussion regarding the quarterly financial report. Aaron Sladek, welcome back.
financials? Okay. So while Devlin pulls the financials up, the good news is I'm going to give you a little bit of a break from all the wordiness that the MTW plan necessitates, but going to have to subject you to blocks of numbers, so it's a trade-off here. Thank you, Devlin. In an effort to make the financials a little bit more digestible to the board and to the public, we do bifurcate the income statement into two segments. The first we dub operations. So you'll see the first page of the operations segment presented here. You'll see a columnar format showing actual budget and the variances for the various lines of business that roll up into operations. So you'll see public housing, followed by housing voucher services, which oversees our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, followed by our Affordable Housing Communities Portfolio, or AHC. This is our nonprofit communities, for example, Wood Hill or Spring Hill, or some examples. And following that is our central office cost center. This is the management company for the federal housing programs of public housing in Section 8. A side note, the AHC portfolio also has a management company, but it's embedded within that line of business itself. And then rounding it out, we have the social element of what we do, our Community Development Initiatives Department. And then you'll see a total for the operations segment. So for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2025, there is a surplus before non-cash items of $34.6 million. This was largely supported by MTW funding, which I'll get into. I have a slide that will break out the different MTW uses. But for now, we'll just kind of look at where they performed operationally. So total operating revenue for the operations segment came in $2.7 million below budget. There was mixed performance across the different revenue categories. Tenant revenue was $500,000 below budget. This was primarily within the public housing portfolio, despite overall strong occupancy of 96.6%. There were bad debt write-offs in the public housing portfolio. There were about $400,000 above budget. Grant revenue exceeded budget by $3.6 million. This was driven largely by $1.4 million in additional Section 8 administrative fees. So HUD will fund the Section 8 program on estimates, and then based on the voucher management system, the actual information that comes in, they'll reconcile that and can provide additional funding if they need to true it up. Project-based Section 8 HAP revenue in the HC portfolio was also $500,000 above budget. This was due to higher contract rents. And then jumping back to public housing, their operating subsidy exceeded budget by $1 million, and that was just because of a difference in the proration rate. We received 102.58% for calendar year 2025 versus budgeted 96.97%. Public housing additionally recognized just under $1 million in shortfall funding. For the new commissioners, shortfall funding was something we were eligible for based on a recent FDS submission. They're looking at your level of reserves, which they do a calculation. They look at basically your current assets and your monthly average operating expenses, and they compute how much money you should have in your reserves. And if there's a deficit, there was a cap of, I think, 25 million at the time for all housing authorities to dip into, and there was a tier-based system. And this was actually the first time that we were eligible for that funding. That number, I think, was around 5.6 million. But accounting rules just dictate, how that revenue was actually recognized. So there was 0.9 million recognized for this 6-month period. Section 8 HAP revenue was 5.8 million below budget. This was due to lower voucher utilization, but you'll see an offset there in their corresponding HAP expense. Total operating expenses for the operations segment came in 10.3 million below budget. Salaries and benefits were 2.4 million under budget due to effective staffing cost management, while other expenses were 2.2 million below budget, largely driven by lower technology, consulting, protective services, and insurance costs. And this is our second segment that I referred to earlier. So this one is, we deem our capital activities segment. And there's just two lines of business in this one. This is our real estate services department. This is Tim and Lorraine's shop. And then we have our capital funds line of business, rounding that out to present a total for capital activities. So on this segment, you'll see that total operating revenue was 0.8 million above budget. A lot of this was due to timing of the capital fund program. This was partially offset by miscellaneous revenue, coming in $1.4 million below budget. This was primarily from lower than anticipated developer and bond issuer fees. We are starting to see a little bit of a catch up in this now that we have River Trails in Emberstone under development. So those fees are recognized as the projects are built based on their construction completion. So we should start to see a little bit of a catch up in that line item the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year. Total operating expenses for the capital segment were $0.7 million below budget. Also, salaries and benefits, again, 0.2 million or 200,000 under budget due to lower staffing costs than anticipated. And then their other expenses were a $500,000 below budget, driven by favorable variance in consulting fees, and then offset partially by some higher legal fees than anticipated. Moving on to the balance sheet. This is a little bit simpler. It's a balance sheet for the whole agency. We can see that total assets and deferred outflows of resources increased by 37 million or 6%. Our current assets rose by 30 million. This was primarily due to reclassifications related to assets held for sale. So we currently have the Rosemont at Highland Park and Costa Valencia properties held for sale. Additionally, we discontinued our Section 8 HAP pre-funding. That was in connection with early last year when the Trump administration took office, and there was a bit of a scare with getting into our systems like ELOCs, and so we made the decision to stop pre-funding our Section 8 HAP. You'll see a large increase in fixed assets of 64.4 million. This was largely driven by property acquisitions within the AHC portfolio, offset by routine depreciation and demolition activity related to Homestead. And these increases were partially offset by a 57.8 million decrease in other non-current assets. This is the item that the auditors had referred to with their emphasis of matter. It was that large write-down of the partnership notes. The bigger ones included in that write-down were Hemisview and the various Wheatley properties. And then our total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources increased by 49.1 million or 21.9%. Our current liabilities rose by 19.7 million. This, again, was primarily due to reclassification of the long-term debt for those two properties, Highland Park and Costa Valencia, reclassed to current status in anticipation of their bond redemption. And our non-current liabilities increased by 26.9 million. This was largely driven by new debt associated with the Amada acquisition, the Elon Gardens refinance, and debt assumed with the acquisition in December of Artisan at Creekside. So rounding it out, our total net position, you can see a decrease of $12.1 million or 3.10%. We do have some news related to the federal funding environment. On February 3rd, 2026, President Trump signed the fiscal year 2026 appropriations bill, which provides funding for HUD programs. Biggest takeaway from that is we are seeing a reduction in the operating fund of 14.4%. So with that in mind, we have been revising our budget for next fiscal year. The capital fund element of that remains level at $3.2 billion total funding for all PHAs, and that's consistent with prior years. Also, this isn't included in the report itself, but some very recent information late last month is that HUD informed us that they will offset our MTW reserves. They're planning an offset, and they referred in their language to the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2016, which states that they will prohibit statutory offsets of MTW reserve balances up to an amount equal to 4 months of operating expenses. What's unknown at this time is what they are going to deem an operating expense. They have referred to looking at our validated 2025 VMS data. Unfortunately, that does not include all of our operating expenses. Typically, when I think total operating expenses, I would look at our financial data schedule, or FDS, which is the report that HUD, the report format that HUD requires for our electronic submission, essentially of our audited figures. So that was the piece that our auditor had referred to still needing to be completed by the end of this month. So there's still some unknowns there. We don't know, what we're going to be subject to as far as the offset, but we are going to communicate to the CEO. He will keep the board informed as to any developments in that area. Can we go to the slides, Devlin? Yeah, you're already there. Thank you. You're ahead of me. So this is our consolidated operating revenue for the agency. We show this actual and budget for the 6 months ended 12/31/25 as compared to the 6 months for 12/31/2024. We can see an increase in our total operating revenue of 7.9%, with the majority of revenue categories showing favorably here. On the consolidated operating expense side, we do see a 2.6% rise from the prior year, and this was driven primarily by higher housing assistance payment expense. Moving along to our financial ratios, we do see, this is to me kind of a significant increase in the debt to equity ratio from 0.39 to 0.54. We're looking to stay under 1 here, so this is still a strong ratio. It did increase because we've taken on new debt for those properties I mentioned earlier, Amada, Elon Gardens, and Artisan at Mission Creek. And then our current ratio, this is our liquidity ratio, also a sharp decrease on this one from 2.63 to 1.87. Still a strong ratio, looking for over 1.5 here. And this to me is more of a temporary decline in the ratio because of those assets held for sale. So if you back out the assets held for sale for Highland Park in Costa Valencia, and then also back out the related current portion of debt, that ratio actually jumps up to 2.65, so actually an increase from prior year. And this is a slide that I said I would get back to related to our surplus in the operations segment. So you can see for the public housing operating shortfall, we had a draw of a little bit under 2.1 million in HUD held funds. We deployed $27.4 million for the Amada Apartments acquisition, about $1.5 million for our Artisan at Creekside Apartments acquisition, $1 million for our community development initiatives, and then a smaller amount of $86,000 to use for our city housing bond match for the Mid-Crown project. I know the board probably wants to remain cognizant of how we're performing as compared to the budget when we get the approval for the MTW fund. So we had asked for $7.2 million to potentially be used to address the public housing operating shortfall. So dividing that by 2 to get your 6 months, we'd be trending around 3.6 million. So you can see we're pretty well under that at the 2.1 right now. And then for our CDI, the board authorized 2.3 million. So having that to 1.15 million, you can see we're about in line as far as addressing their needs. Also included in your packet is a cash and investment summary. And our cash balance increased. This compares just the quarter, so 3-month look back here. Total cash and investment balance increased by 3.4 million from the previous quarter. This was primarily due to 3 factors. So our facility corporation had an increase of about 0.9 million due to collection of developer fees, which we're always happy to hear. We're collecting on our development fees. So we collected fees from Mira Vista, Vista at Reed, and our Bristol at Somerset projects. Our centralized bank account net cash increased by 1.4 million. This is mainly due to timing of reimbursements from operating properties. And then in our restricted cash section, we did have a net cash increase of 1.1 million, and this was related to the acquisition of Artisan at Creekside. And those funds are fully bond restricted, and they were actually applied in January to the property's refinancing. So that was more of a cash in and cash out type of effect. And lastly, you do have a grants report included in your packet. If there's any questions from that, happy to take those and get with grant and program staff. But thank you so much. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question for clarifying my understanding. So similar to the liquidity, the improvement in our liquidity position, the DDE ratio will decrease once the debt to equity ratio should decrease again once we do sell the properties that are being held for sale?
That's correct, because the debt to equity, so the debt component of that ratio is going to have current and non-current debt, so you're correct.
And then with regard to that regulatory change, and I know we've been hearing about proposals sort of floating on the breeze for many months now, but it seems like what you were saying is that the current proposal that HUD might be considering would would give us a smaller amount of reserve potential than utilizing the FDS statement that you mentioned. It would be more restrictive to us, that we would prefer to see them utilize the FDS for
right, and especially if Diana has thoughts on this, and she has seen where they include HAP expense. She has seen that where she's hesitant to state for factually that they're going to include HAP expense or monthly HAP expense in that calculation. Right now, I think kind of the rumor is that they may include it, but 4 months may not be what they are for. They may say, well, you get 2 months of HAP expense in your reserves. The difference is going to be subject to recapture. Get more thoughts on that?
Well, so 2 things. The 4-month reserve information is not even available to them in the system that they're quoting they're going to use, the VMS system. It's Section 8 program reporting, and as well as the MTW uses and commitments that we have. So for them to even calculate 4 months of public housing reserves, they need to use the FDS system, and it's their data, it's their required format, so it should be easy for them to calculate. The unknown, the biggest unknown is if they're going to include any HAP in that reserve calculation. In the past, HUD's been reluctant to call that an operating expense, although in the audit and in the FDS reporting, it is an operating expense. There has been discussion about, in the past, again, about would a housing authority benefit from having 2 months of HAP reserve, which in our case would be over $20 million. If they considered 4 months, it would be over $40 million. And if it were 4 months, we would this is just a wish of mine, right, would be no offset. And we would be able to retain the current reserves we have and use them for the balance of the authorized uses that the board made during the last budget presentation in June.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Commissioners, if I can just add that we did contact HUD National in DC to kind of get clarification on the recapture. They told me, we talked to the MTW team, we talked to the Public Indian Housing team, and they told us, or they told me that any recapturing that could happen in the future, we can appeal that decision. And if it's related to our repositioning, which is our preservation of our public housing, they would approve it. So there's, and as I mentioned, there's a slight panic. We're about to enter a 10-year plan, which includes the use of these MTW reserve funds. So as long as the appeal is related to repositioning, they would be happy to approve it.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
No further questions, comments? Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the last discussion item of this afternoon, and that is an update and discussion regarding the legislative update. Teresa Menendez-Myers, Government and Community Affairs. Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks. Mics are a reminder of how short you are. All right. Okay, so we'll be quick. Okay. So good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I want to walk you through our legislative and regulatory priorities. As an organization, we are dedicated to provide affordable homes to thousands of people in San Antonio. And to continue to this work effectively, we are working with and alongside our trade associations, such as NARO, FADA, CLAPA, aligning our advocacy efforts, not only with them on a national scale, but also locally with the partners in the SHIP, as well as the newly formed Affordable Housing Coalition, to focus on streamlining our priorities to be streamlining programs, streamlining processes, securing predictable federal funding. So funding priorities. Our first priority, of course, is improving federal programs to ensure no family loses their assistance due to rising costs. We must protect existing assets by continuing to insist for full funding of public housing capital and operating funds to address modernization and critical repairs. In addition, we are advocating for increased funding and flexibility for housing choice vouchers to help families compete in this competitive market with rising rental costs. Regulatory priorities. We are advocating for the strengthening of programs like the Family Self-Sufficiency, FSS, Resident Opportunities and Self-Sufficiency, ROSS, and Jobs Plus that bridge the gap between housing and economic independence. These connect residents to employment, income growth, and economic independence. But also, we need a more efficient federal partner. So we are advocating for HUD to follow transparent rulemaking processes for new requirements. We are also seeking the limitation of regulations to reduce the administrative burden on our staff and residents. An example being asking for exemptions from the Build America, Buy America requirements, which often create unnecessary financial and administrative barriers for housing developments. Some legislation in Congress, well, to be honest, since this slide was created, there's been an update, all right? So on March 3rd, 2026, the Senate advanced a major bipartisan housing package with an 84-6 vote. Now, this bill that they passed actually merges these two. So it takes the Road to Housing Act and the Housing for the 21st Century Act and creates the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. So the key highlights of this, the board is essentially wanting to tackle sky-high housing costs by building again, and building more. So some of the major provisions that they're doing is one, they're going to focus on cost and supply by lowering the costs and increasing the housing supply, by streamlining certain regulations and empowering local communities. The other that's interesting is an investor ban, which includes a White House-backed push to ban large investors from purchasing single-family homes, thus promoting home ownership. That was interesting. So this bill, we will see it now. It's going to move through additional Senate procedural steps before returning back to the House, but it's expected to pass because the previous version did pass with overwhelming support. We'll be following it and keeping you posted. This does align with several of our core advocacy goals by increasing supply, empowering local communities to expand the housing stock by reducing some of the red tape and streamlining some regulations. And of course, protecting the market by addressing the impact of large-scale investors on single-family home availabilities and supporting the goal of stabilizing home ownership. So in essence, I think this bipartisan objective is to make it easier for builders to build, lenders to lend responsibly, and families to save, thus expanding options for both renters and future homeowners. And our next steps. Our next steps are we are looking at the Community Funding Project, CPF. We are actually looking to submit some CFP funding requests through the congressional offices that are accepting submissions. There's not many of them left in Bexar County, so we have some options. But we will also continue our unified efforts with our partners to reach out to Congress to increase funding, advocate for the need of legislative and regulatory changes. There are many of those efforts coming up with meetings, working alongside NARO. There's CLAPA, and of course the SA to DC, the Affordable Housing Coalition partners, are going in to also lobby and advocate for more funds. So we will continue looking for more funding and legislative opportunities, not only at the federal level, but also at the local and the state levels. And that concludes my brief presentation for you today on our federal priorities. I don't know if you have any questions.
No questions? Thank you, Teresa.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, we'll move on to the President's report.
Chair, thank you. And Commissioners, I'll begin with an operational update. And just to piggyback on what Teresa said, I know there's going to be lots of congressional engagement this month. I know Hector Morales, our Government Relations Manager, and Commissioner Miranda will be on Capitol Hill next week for meetings with staff to kind of push for additional public housing administrative fees and public housing subsidies, and as well as our funding assistance. The week after, there will be the CLAFA meeting, and that's the Council for Large Public Housing Authorities. I'll be attending that meeting, and we'll actually be meeting with appropriations staff from both Senate and House, and so we'll get a better feel. I know last week when we met with them, they told us, they gave us a warning. They said, we're looking under couches, under mattresses, looking for money, and next year is going to be brutal, and now we're here, and it's been brutal. So it'll be interesting to get their sense of where we're headed next. And then the following week is the SA to DC. We'll be joining the mayor and the city council members and many stakeholders in our city to push on Capitol Hill as well. So it's going to be a very busy March, but there's a lot of good work ahead of us. I wanted to report back here, at least in our office, that our Central Office Federal Housing Programs Lobby, also known as the Housing Information Hub, has officially reopened following a 6-month renovation. Operations have now returned to the renovated lobby at 820 South Florida Street. I want to thank our staff for maintaining service continuity throughout the transition. I especially want to recognize General Services and Capital Projects Division for delivering a successful renovation. I'd also like to share an update on our 2 FY 2026 Congressional Funding Awards supporting critical capital needs. The federal appropriations bills have been approved and signed into law. With the support of Congressman Greg Casad, we secured $850,000 for building improvements at the Morris C. Building Apartments. Additionally, through funding support by Congressman Joaquin Castro, we were awarded more than $1 million for roof replacements and environmental reviews at the Pin Oak 2, Raimundo Rangel, and the Williamsburg Apartments. These funds address priority preservation needs and strengthen the long-term stability of these communities. We appreciate the continued partnership with our congressional delegation. Turning to resident engagement, the Community Development Initiatives Department, or as we in-house refer to as CDI, hosted our second Resident Advisory Board meeting on February 20th. During the session, our team presented an overview of the draft Moving to Work plan, invited feedback on the proposed priorities, as Nicholas mentioned earlier. As a Resident Advisory Board continues to meet, it ensures that resident perspectives inform our policy and planning decisions. As we saw earlier with the photo with our employees that the chair and vice chair took with our employees, I'd like to take a moment to recognize them. They were recently nominated by our peers for outstanding service and leadership. From Public Housing, Melissa Hernandez, Assistant Manager of Admissions, was recognized for her positivity and willingness to support colleagues across departments. In Housing Voucher Services, Ashley Hernandez, Administrative Specialist number 3, was acknowledged for her generosity and consistent commitment to helping both residents and staff navigate complex processes. From CDI, Louis Dominguez, Assistant Manager of Resident Services, was nominated for his steady leadership, attention to detail, dedication to both his team and our senior residents. In Affordable Housing Communities, Anissa Guzman, a community manager, was recognized for her patience, professionalism, and grace in serving residents, especially within our senior community setting. And in Finance and Accounting, Priscilla Segovia, our budget manager, received multiple nominations highlighting her expertise, work ethic, unwavering support during critical reporting and payroll cycles. These recognitions reflect the strength of our workforce and the culture of service and accountability that sustains our mission. We always remind our staff, right, we're public servants, and it's a good reminder to recognize these public servants for the day-to-day work that they do. And so I'm grateful for their contributions and proud of their standard they set for our organization. That same commitment to service and shared responsibility also guides how we work with our external partners. CDI staff convened a second collaborative connections meeting with our external teams and community partners. It's a fancy word, collaborative connections, to mean all of our service providers that provide services to our residents. This body serves as a working forum where internal teams and community partners align efforts to better serve residents. This session focused on improving how we transition residents from referral to results. Specifically, teams examine how we assess readiness, clarify eligibility, better prepare residents before connecting them to partner resources. This coordination reduces barriers, improves follow-through, and increases the likelihood of successful outcomes. I also wanted to mention that the Affordable Housing Communities, which is our nonprofit portfolio, the team partnered with the City of San Antonio to host a lease-up fair at the Claude W. Black Community Center on February 26. The event was well attended by community members seeking information about available units across our mixed income portfolio. Staff provided guidance on eligibility requirements and outlined next steps for individuals and families interested in applying. Moving on to the 2026 Affordable Housing Outlook that we hosted on February 27th. We brought together leaders from the public, private, nonprofit sectors to examine the pressures and opportunities shaping our affordable housing industry in San Antonio. The event highlighted the importance of cross-sector partnerships and coordinated approaches to addressing housing challenges. I just wanted to thank all the commissioners who made it out there. It seemed pretty far away on I-10, past 410, but thank you for participating. And the event will be posted on our YouTube channel to have a wider audience. A few upcoming events. We're hosting or participating in the Haven for Hope Spring Community Resource Fair on March 6th, the Workforce Solutions Alamo Job Fair on March 19th, the Housing Power Hour Plus, which we're bringing back after a short break. It kicks off the 2026 series on March 27th. There's the 31st Annual Basura Bash River Cleanup on March 7th. And also the Cesar Chavez March for Justice on March 28th. And then next month, we're hosting our 2 Fiesta fundraisers to help support our resident services. These funds go into our newly established, or revamped rather, 501c3 organization called the Community Home Community Fund. And so those funds will be used specifically for resident services in our program. And so, Chairwoman and Commissioners, that is the President's report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments? No? I'd like to personally thank the folks that we recognize today. Melissa, Ashley, Luis, Anissa, and Priscilla, thank you so much for the work that you do and for being leaders in your respective areas and being models of what our residents deserve and how we want to make sure we show and present ourselves to the community. Thank you. Okay, if there are no additional comments, I am going to go ahead and recess our regular board meeting for nonprofit corporation meetings. We will now recess for the regular board meeting and enter into the Las Varas Public Facility Corporation meeting. And it is now, oh, I'm sorry, my watch. It is now 3:38 p.m.
Hello and welcome to Opportunity Homes San Antonio's Las Varas Public Facility Corporation meeting agenda. Please note that all commissioners are still in attendance. All directors are in attendance. You may call the meeting to order.
Okay, this meeting is called to order. We do not require roll call, and the time is currently still 3:38 p.m. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to call for an approval of the December 10th, 2025 Las Varas Public Facility Corporation meeting minutes. If there is no discussion, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the December 10th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, now we will move on to consent items. We have consent items numbers 4 through 6. Are there any questions or discussion regarding these 3 items?
Madam Chair, just to note that we had extensive presentations on these items earlier today.
Absolutely, thank you. With no discussion or questions, I'd like to call for a motion to approve consent items number 4 through 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, now that we have concluded business with Las Varas, I am going to go ahead and call for an adjournment if there are no objections. The meeting stands adjourned at 3:40 p.m. We will now go to the San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation meeting. So I will call that meeting to order. It is now 3:40 p.m. No roll call is necessary. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you for that. And now I will ask for an approval of the February 4th, 2026 San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation meeting minutes. If there are no questions or discussion regarding that, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
We have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes and the February 4th, 2026 meeting minutes are approved. We will now move on to consent items. Are there any questions or discussions regarding consent items numbers 4 through 7? Not hearing that there are any, I will call for a motion to approve consent items 4 through 7. Do I have a first?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. All business being concluded for is this Las Varas? No, this isn't Las Varas. The Housing Facility Corporation. I will adjourn this meeting. It is now 3:41 p.m. And we will move on to the Refugio Street Public Facility Corporation meeting.
You may call the meeting to order.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, okay, thank you. I can hear and I can't. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and open the Refugio Street Public Facility Corporation meeting. It is currently 3:42 p.m. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you for that. Having no citizens to speak, we will move to approve the November 9th, 2021 Refugio Street Public Facility Corporation meeting minutes. Any discussion or questions regarding that? Is that date correct? Okay, sorry. If there are no questions, I request a motion to approve the November 9th, 2021 Refugio Street Public Facility Corporation meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Having a first and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. We will now proceed to the consent item. We have consent item number 4. Is there any discussion or questions regarding that? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve consent item number 4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. And if there are no objections or questions, we will now adjourn this meeting. Hearing none, we are adjourned at 3:43 p.m. We will now return to the regular board meeting.
The time is 3:44 p.m. You may call the meeting back to order.
Thank you. The board has returned to the regular board meeting and call this meeting to order. We will now move into closed session. Moving on to closed session, Board Legal Counsel, will you read us into closed session?
Yes, ma'am. The board will convene in closed session under Texas Government Code Sections 551.072 and 551.071 to discuss and consult with the attorney regarding legal concerns related to the Horizon Point development. The time is 3:44. There's no action required of the board. There was no action taken in closed session, so the board is free to adjourn this meeting.
All right, then I think I can, unless we have any questions from the board or comments from the board regarding any other items, I think that I can adjourn the meeting. All right, hearing no objection, the meeting stands adjourned. The time is, what time is it? 4:32. Thank you. I feel like I handled that really well.